I know. What's the goal that you're trying to accomplish today?
We'll be telling the court today that Nicki Minaj has satisfied the judgment.
Of course. Okay. Do you feel like it's wrong that,
We'll see you later.
Anything else you could tell us?
We can talk later.
Thank you.
Nicki Minaj really just escaped losing a $20 million mansion, and no, it wasn't because she was broke or down bad. It was because she waited until the very last second to take the court system seriously, and the judge was already halfway to saying put the house on the market. This story has been spinning the blogs all week, but once you strip away the exaggeration and the fan wars, what's left is a wild example of how fame does not protect you when paperwork starts piling up. This whole situation goes back to 2019 during one of Nicki Minaj's shows in Frankfurt, Germany. According to court filings and reporting, a male security guard named Thomas Wiedemeyer was working backstage that night. He claims there was a heated confrontation involving Nicki Minaj and a female security staff member. When he allegedly stepped in to intervene and calm things down, the situation escalated fast. Thomas says Nicki's husband, Kenneth Petty, punched him in the face. That single moment allegedly changed his life. His jaw was broken so badly that he required multiple surgeries, and to this day he reportedly has 5 metal plates permanently fixed in his face. This wasn't a bruise that healed in a few weeks. This was a lasting injury that followed him long after the concert lights shut off. Years later in 2022, Thomas officially filed a lawsuit against both Kenneth Petty and Nicki Minaj. He wasn't asking for some outrageous celebrity-level payday. According to the case, he sought compensation for medical bills and damages for pain, suffering, and ongoing injury. Altogether, the amount came out to a little over $700,000. At that point, most people assumed the case would be handled quietly through lawyers, negotiations, or a settlement behind the scenes. That's usually how these situations go when celebrities are involved. But that's not what happened here. Instead, Nicki Minaj and Kenneth Petty reportedly did not respond to the lawsuit at all. No formal defense was filed, no court appearance, no response through attorneys, and this is where a lot of people misunderstand how the legal system works. When you ignore a lawsuit, it doesn't pause or disappear. The court keeps moving without you. If you don't show up to defend yourself, you automatically lose by default. That's exactly what happened. By March of 2024, the judge issued a default judgment in favor of the security guard. The court ultimately awarded him over $500,000. At that point, the case should have ended. The judgment was clear. Pay the money, close the file, move on. But months went by and nothing happened. No payment was made. No public indication that the judgment had been satisfied. And that's when the situation turned serious in a way that even Nicki's critics didn't fully expect. Nicki Minaj owns a massive mansion in Hidden Hills, California, a property that's now valued at around $20 million. Because the judgment remained unpaid, the security guard's legal team asked the court for permission to enforce the judgment by going after her assets. In plain terms, they asked the judge to authorize the forced sale of her home to recover the money she owed. Shockingly to some, the judge agreed. The court was prepared to move forward with selling the house. The only thing holding everything up was one final document from Bank of America confirming details related to the mortgage. Once that paperwork was in, the judge was ready to sign off. That meant Nicki Minaj was literally hours away from a court-ordered sale of her mansion over a debt that, in comparison to her overall wealth, was relatively small. It wasn't about affordability. It was about compliance. And at the very last moment, just before the judge could make it official, Nicki finally paid.
Tell us what happened in court in there.
So today we informed the court that Nicki Minaj has satisfied the judgment, and so therefore there was no need to proceed further with our motion for an order authorizing the sale of her house in order to satisfy that judgment.
What does your client think of this? How's he responding?
He is incredibly gratified and happy. It's been a long time coming to have justice finally done here. But he's very happy for himself. He suffered a very heinous attack years ago. And not only did it take years to achieve the judgment, but then took nearly 2 years in order to enforce that judgment. And we never thought it would have to go quite this far in order to actually go and put a levy on a millionaire's house. And go to the last 24 hours before she decides to satisfy the judgment.
Have you talked to Nicki Minaj? Do you think she feels remorseful about what happened?
I can't speak for her. I have not spoken to her directly, and I've only spoken to her counsel.
According to the security guard's attorney, they had to go all the way to what he described as the 1-yard line before they got paid. In other words, they had to threaten everything before Nicki decided to cut the check. Once payment was confirmed, the lawyers immediately informed the court. and the motion to sell the house was withdrawn. The mansion stayed in Nicki's hands, and the security guard finally received his money after waiting for years. The lawyer later spoke publicly and confirmed that the judgment had been fully satisfied. He described his client as relieved and gratified, saying that justice had taken an unusually long time. He also made it clear that they never expected the case to escalate to the point of potentially seizing a multi-million-dollar home, but that's where things ended up after nearly 2 years of trying to enforce the judgment. When asked whether Nicki Minaj expressed any remorse over what happened, the lawyer said he had never spoken to her directly and had only dealt with her legal counsel. This is where public opinion really split. Some people rushed online claiming Nicki Minaj was about to be homeless or that she was going broke. That narrative spread fast, but it didn't make much sense. Anyone thinking logically knew that a multi-millionaire who just grossed over $100 million on tour was not about to be financially ruined over a $500,000 judgment. Others, however, focused on the fact that it never should have gotten this far in the first place. From that perspective, the issue wasn't money. It was the decision to ignore the process and force the court to apply pressure.
So guys, it's been confirmed. Nicki Minaj will in fact not have to sell her $20 million home to pay that bodyguard his $500,000 judgment. Today, the lawyers took to the courthouse to let it be known that Nicki Minaj in fact did pay the $500,000 and she satisfied the judgment. But anybody with critical thinking skills knew that this woman was not going to have to sell her house. Y'all thought a multi-millionaire was going to have to sell a $20 million house over a $500,000 lawsuit. Think about how crazy that sounds. People really have to start using critical thinking before they hate, because y'all got on here and said that this woman was going to go homeless and she was going broke and she was going to have to sell her house. A lot of y'all don't be thinking. So this should honestly clear up the whole Nicki Minaj going broke rumors, because she just paid $500K. And most of us do not have no $500K to come out our pockets and pay somebody. So let's be for real. Everybody really got online and said, oh, Nicki Minaj is about to be homeless. The same woman who grossed over $108 million on her tour? Y'all let me know what y'all thinking in the comments. That's a wrap on that.
There was also heavy discussion about the dynamic between Nicki and her husband. Kenneth Petty is the one accused of throwing the punch, yet Nicki was the one whose assets were on the line. That rubbed a lot of people the wrong way and reignited long-running debates about loyalty, accountability, and whether Nicki has a habit of putting herself in difficult situations by standing 10 toes down for the people around her, even when it costs her publicly and financially. At the end of the day, Nicki Minaj did not lose her house. The rumors of her being broke were exaggerated. But what can't be ignored is how close this situation came to becoming a legal and reputational disaster. Ignoring lawsuits doesn't make them disappear. It gives the court more power to act. And if Nicki had waited any longer, this story could have ended very differently. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think Nicki handled this the wrong way by letting it drag out until the last second? Or do you think the media completely overreacted and turned a routine legal enforcement into clickbait chaos? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's talk about it.